Very topical seminar, and the title for my short presentation is War Refugees and an Essential Dimension of European Memory Culture, but obviously I'll speak very much about Ukraine and Finland. As you know, in Finland we don't celebrate the Victory Day today, but Europe Day, and I was actually yesterday interviewed by a Finnish journalist. I had to explain in length why this is the case. Finland, as other East European countries, their experience, our experience of Second World War and how it ended was not in celebration, but it was especially for us, but not as much for Finland as many other East European countries. A continuation of the tragedy and difficulties, not least for those countries that had been occupied 3 times first by Soviet Union, then by the Germans, and then again by Soviet Union. And it is interesting that this more complex memory of half or 2/3 of Europeans of memory of Second War is somehow forgotten not only in Russia but also in Great Britain and in France and United States. Of course, it was as a victory in question of defeating, destroying Hitler's Germany, but that unfortunately did not mean the end of sorrows and problems for many Europeans, not least for the war refugees. That is the theme for our discussion today. Now, war refugees in mass scale is a 20th century phenomenon, because up until then the wars that were fought, of course, regularly, very often in many places, did not end in mass refugees, for the simple reason that there were not places to escape to. Either they were killed or then they had to stay in place. But also the simple scale of warfare, both in First World War and even more in Second World War, meant that if civilians wanted to survive, they had to flee. Now, in Second World War, it has been estimated that 14 million to 16 million people were displaced, which is about the same as were killed in Second World War. It is estimated like 54 million Europeans were killed, and of them were 27 million Soviet citizens, and again, if you look at about the proportion soldiers and civilians, half of those 54 million people were civilians. It's huge, massive, tragic numbers. And if we add to that also the war refugees, we understand what a huge difference it was already from First World War. Of course, in First World War, there was a lot of refugees from Russia and from Turkey. The Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, the dissolution of that was also a huge tragedy, as you know, for the Armenians in former Ottoman Empire. So this kind of this war refugee memory culture, one can say, begins on this scale in the end of First World War. Now, later on, of course, also in Europe, if you look at it globally, the figures are, of course, even higher. But in Cold War meant actually, in question of refugees, that there was not any more possibilities to escape from the Soviet-dominated bloc. But after the Cold War, it was of course the civil war in former Yugoslavia. 4 million people and now in Ukraine, I suppose the number is at this moment 7 million refugees,
Yes.
which is much more than citizens in Finland, 5.5. So that is for us Finns is good to remember. It's a huge number as well. Now this experience of being forced to left the home country, in these numbers are not included, of course, those Ukrainians that then escaped to other parts of Ukraine. Ukraine is a large country, of course. To escape from eastern parts to Ukraine, the western part is, of course, the same languages spoken there are the same, but it's still, a very different experience. It's like Finland in the end of Winter War and the continuation war. We had 430,000 refugees from Karelia, and actually after continuation war there was not as many, because all Karelians had not returned to their home lands in the beginning of the next war, but still it was in question of how many citizens or how few citizens there were in Finland. It was a question of more than a tenth of the population in Finland. I mean, in question of Ukraine, I think 7 million people is like more than 5% of the population, isn't it? It's like 44 million citizens in Ukraine, or they were.
They were.
Yeah. So we understand it's a huge number of persons. Now, all this is something that people, not only those who have flew to other parts of Europe, but carry with them, and they are remembering those, they are experiencing those, and it's only a question of what they experience. But those who then have to cooperate with them and are hearing about the experience are of course included in these memories. So it's not, I mean, of course, those who are forced to leave their home country, for them it is the worst experience. But it is also a memory that all Europeans in one or another way, think about and live with. Also in a kind of in sort of indirect way, that the tragedy and the attack against Ukraine has reactivated memories in Finland and many other parts of Europe, how it is to be forced to leave your home country. Now, this is something that in traditional military history is very much forgotten. That it's not only about warfare, about killing or destroying, but it's also on a massive scale question about migration. Now, in modern migration history, it is emphasized that it's not only the movement of soldiers or prisoners of war or evacuated or different kind, but the whole scale of people moving around has always both economic, social, and cultural consequences. Also on long time, dimension. One can actually say that Cold War and post-Cold War European memory culture has very much, been formed by the memories of the refugees, because in each family, actually, most families in Europe, there are memories or experiences and about how lives totally change when you had to leave your home and the local culture and all that behind. Meaning that also when you have to, but it's not like you're carrying them always. At least according to research in Finland, there are different stages in how this memory culture develops and changes. The first stage is often depending very much on how the country and the culture where a region where the refugees then end up and try to build up their new life. Yeah? Let's hope, and we have to trust that Ukrainians can return to their home country. But in many parts of Europe, for example, in Finland, we very much hope also that there will be a number of Ukrainians that will stay in Finland, because we need immigrants and we need new, so to say, blood
we need them back.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
I understand it very well. Still, I mean.
But you're always welcome to Ukraine afterwards.
So it is very important also to think about that. But then, depending on how the society and culture develops during the decades after the change, then the memories then develop. Depending on how refugees establish their own organizations, how they are, so to say, represented in political decision making, as in Finland, it was very important during Cold War, the question of refugees, and they were a strong, so to say, political force in Finnish in domestic politics, and so that is good to remember. I'm a historian. I'm not a future researcher, so I'm not going to guess how things will develop for Ukraine. But it is clear that what has happened in Ukraine and Europe will fundamentally also form all Europeans, of course, especially Ukrainians, but all Europeans, experience and memories and discussions, understanding of what it means to be a refugee. Now, what I already said, there are very different memories, understandings of the war refugees in different parts of Europe. But my hope is that even if we are hit by Europeans by this kind of attacks and tragedies, they actually will also be important for the Europeans to understand that we have to act together, because if we don't do it, Ukrainians will not be the last war refugees in Europe, and therefore I think it's very important that you have organized this seminar, and thank you for the attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can take 1-2 quick questions before we go to our next speaker. Questions? Vasily?
Mr. Meinander, you talk about the possibility to involve these refugees to politics, but case with Karyalan refugees, or Karyalan Litvo, this is a unique case because these people were involved. They were very close to Finnish society. It means that it was naturally to be involved. As I know, because I visited Karyalan Litvo house and I saw this, how close they were, and of course it's a pity now it glowed down a little bit, but anyway, in our case, with Ukrainians who are here, now, as you know, not a long time ago it was this election, and we tried to be in this election here in Finland.
Yeah.
And it's not easy for us.
You mean a municipality?
Municipality election, yes, and for Ukrainians, of course, we have tried to be in.
Yes.
That our representatives can be in the city council, Helsinki or Tampere or other places, but of course we understand that we need to be much more prepared from different point of view, because this is very difficult to be involved in this political process of course this country. Of course, and my question is that still, because you gave as an example of this, that
Yeah.
Do you think that we can repeat as Ukrainians here or Sweden or somewhere else this experience? Or
Yes, I mean, I think I would presume that one possibility is to see, you know, the Ukrainian refugees in different parts of Europe. That if you would unite your forces, for example, there's a large number of Ukrainian refugees, not only in Poland but especially in Germany, and so it is an issue on EU level more than on national level, and now and it's my guess. I don't think it's a wild guess that the war in Ukraine will force European Union to take again one step forward towards a federative Europe, and that I think would be very necessary. Otherwise, a number of new problems will arise, and when that happens, then of course it would be important for Ukrainians, you know, those 7 million Ukrainians in other parts of Europe to have a kind of strategy how to, you know, try to, you know, enforce and emphasize how European Union should involve Ukraine in the development of the Union, because of course that is the aim, that Ukraine should become a member of the European Union.
Yeah.
But I think before that, European Union need to transform into a real political union, federation. That's my guess.